Yeah, the Democrats sure wish we'd stop talking about all the devastating Joe Biden cover-up headlines. Well, too bad. One of the Obama bros is now admitting that he soft-pedaled concerns about our geriatric former president, and here's why.
I remember feeling, I want to talk about this as a huge liability. I want to talk about this as something Joe Biden can overcome. But I'm not going to go so far as to say, I think Joe Biden must drop out. He is too old to be president. A, because I didn't know exactly what was going on behind the scenes. But B, if Joe Biden is the candidate, I want him to win because I care about the country.
Well, you saw the liberal Daily Show host, Jon Stewart. He's warning his fellow Democrats that anyone with the stench of Joe Biden on them is going to have a tough time scrubbing it off.
It has sown the seeds for a real, and it's an opportunity for an interesting reinvention of what this Democratic Party can be. It's going to come from someone outside of it. I think anybody that has any of that stink on them is not going to be particularly successful. If that is not a Democrat's slogan in 2028, something has gone terribly wrong. Overcome the stink. If I don't have that on a bumper sticker,
it's compelling. Compelling.
Greg, what's with Democrats and presidents that just their health falls apart? I mean, you got FDR, now you got Biden.
I didn't see that. You just named two. Two out of a. See, I think you need a third one for a trend. Jimmy Carter passed away, so I'll help you there. But
150.
Yes, that's
Man
true.
was old for a long time.
They're realizing that they need a Trump of their own, and they're right, because Trump took on the establishment, not just the Democrats. He took on everybody. They need that because they need somebody to take on their party. But they have to realize that it was their treatment of Trump specifically that got him to this juncture. Why did they tolerate, protect, and enable a decrepit president? Because they convinced themselves that Trump was Orange Hitler, and that anything was better than Orange Hitler. Leave nothing on the table. Everything was on the table, including lying, creating a cover-up, because, you know, a corpse would be better. A corpse would be better than Trump. Scott Adams lays it out. I'm going to keep mentioning him every day. The Biden is fine hoax was dependent on the Trump is Hitler hoax, which was resting on the fine people hoax. And it was the fine people hoax, and this is the hilarious part, that Biden ran on in 2020. His own words. So how crazy is it that the lie that got him elected is now the lie that effectively destroyed the party? You know, this is why I brought up the fine people hoax every day, because this is where it ends. They do need a rebrand. They may have to change their name. Philip Morris became Altria. That's a possibility. Bruce Jenner became Caitlyn. I don't know. This could happen. But they need a complete cleaning of the house. The one thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up, the corruption is so vast and so widespread, it might work to the Democrats' benefit. Because, like, where do you start?
I don't know where you start. I know where James Comer is going to start, apparently, Jillian. He's going to call in folks to be be interviewed over what they knew, when they knew it, and he's positioning this as an investigation into potentially, I guess, defrauding the American people.
I was just going to say he's going to do what he always does, which is open an investigation, and that is going to go forward. Everybody's going to kill me for saying this, but to play devil's advocate, right? I'm not saying there was not a
preach, Jillian.
I'm not saying there was not a cover-up, and I'm not saying that people should not be held responsible. I have never worked in politics, but having worked in Washington, D.C. for a very long time, I will tell you that this is the job of aides, whether they're working for a member of Congress. Greg's shaking his head in agreement with me.
No, I've said this. It's not that the White House is supposed to lie.
Correct.
It's the media. It's the media that's really it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so there's accusations against the media for covering up and the officials. In terms of the officials at the White House, they were hired by the Biden campaign and then the Biden White House to protect the president's interest. A big part of your job when you work in Washington, whether you work for a freshman member of Congress or the commander-in-chief, is to hide some of the more unsavory aspects about them, whatever those are, hide their weaknesses, and insist that there's nothing going, no problems, everything is great. So I think it's not that you don't then blame people for taking that way too far, but not everybody looks at it as this was something wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of people look at it as like the staff, at the staff level, they were just doing their jobs.
But the media didn't do their
Not
job.
the media, yeah.
So
I include
Jessica,
you.
like more of a 30,000-foot view here. If you wanted to draw something similar in a different way, you go back after George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, the Republican Party was not in a good place. So you had this Tea Party movement that came after it. It did pretty well, kind of fizzled out under Obama, and then from there you have what is now the MAGA movement that has taken over the Republican Party. The Democrat Party, is Joe Biden the George Bush for them, the one that's going to cause a major reset, that's going to create a groundswell of something different?
I don't think so. No, I still think that there are not that many policy variations that other Democrats would be putting forward. I mean, you have the progressive wing and you have the more centrist wing, but generally speaking, Democrats are pretty happy with the legislative achievements of the Biden White House, which is why it was so hard for so many people to say that they thought he wasn't doing a good job or that he couldn't continue on to run again. And so, no, I don't think it's like the Tea Party movement. And usually what happens when there is a challenge from the left is that they just lose to the centrist candidate. I mean, that's why we don't have Cori Bush anymore. That's why we don't have Jamal Bowman anymore. There aren't really parallels between the two. But I think what's going to happen, and
I'd say Ilhan Omar is way worse than Michelle Bachmann was. I mean, there's still plenty of them in there. I mean,
yeah, there are definitely far left progressives in there. But I'm just saying that. Anyway. What 2028 is going to be about is what happens over the course of the next 4 years. That's what happens. It's going to be a referendum on the Trump 2.0. If J.D. Vance is top of the ticket, it'll be easier to tie it directly to him. And right at this particular moment, Democrats aren't all that unhappy with what they're seeing. You know, Trump announcing a tariff war a day, for instance. This reconciliation bill, if it goes through and cuts hundreds of billions of dollars from Medicaid and Medicare to give tax breaks to the wealthy.
Not true, but okay.
It is 100% true.
You are spinning.
I'm not.
You are spinning so fast. I'm getting under my eyes.
I'm looking straight ahead.
They're not.
Ask Josh Hawley. And
Okay,
I would say,
hold on. Let me get him on the phone. Josh?
Tell him I loved his op-ed. And Greg mentioned a staggering level of corruption. And I just got a note that the staggering level of corruption from last night's meme coin dinner.
That's what you're focusing on, the meme coin.
No, 40% of Donald Trump's wealth has been accumulated since he became president because of 2 crypto coins. The New York Times did interviews with foreign buyers of this cryptocurrency who came over here to have dinner with him. A guy from South Korea.
This is not even part of the segment.
So what?
You're talking about a meme coin.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about who's corrupt and who is profiting off the American office.
Did he try to cover that up? I don't think so.
Yeah, Caroline Levitt said
you're defending an administration that covered up a dying leader, and you're sitting here going, but meme coin, meme coin.
I'm saying billions.
All right, let's give Paul a chance to clean it up real quick. Paul, final thoughts.
It is clean on my side of the street.
All right, all I'm going to say is this. Right now, if the Democrats are really happy with all of their legislative initiatives and where they sit, then they were out to lunch 5 November, 20 January, and subsequent because they got shellacked. There's that.
There you go.
Okay, number 2, let me just focus on investigations real quick because Comer is going to constitute. I want this congressional investigation to be the backdrop of summer. Let that be, summer you got like baseballs on in the background, you're not really paying attention. These hearings should be something that's going on in the background. Here's why. Donald Trump, 34 quote-unquote felony convictions on that BS case brought here in New York City, based on the idea that it was election interference. Well, if paying Stormy Daniels is election interference to a beyond a reasonable doubt standard, then you're telling me hiding the fact that we had a president who was completely non-compos mentis. That's not election interference? I want to know who colluded on that. And you know what? There's no getting out of it if you're the media, and here's why. No. You can take it from the guy himself. He would come out at the press conferences, he'd look at the cards, and he'd say, okay, let me see who I'm going to call on here. So very clearly they were colluding. Get people under oath, get into the comms. It's always it's always the comms, as they say in Intel. Get into those communications. Find out who's talking to. Remember Donna Brazil gave you the questions to Hillary Clinton? Yeah. Find out if that kind of stuff went on. Find out who was involved, and you can even if it doesn't have to be arrests, but put the sunlight on it because the entire media needs an enema.
So what Donald Trump said, he said, clean it up real good. All right, up next, the loser Chicago mayor with a 7% approval rating is calling President Trump a monster.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Kane podcast for full episodes right now.